Hey everyone, I'm Knox Williams with the American Suppressor Association, and today we have some very exciting news to announce. Earlier this week, an ASA Foundation and silencer shop backed lawsuit was filed against the state of Illinois challenging their ban on suppressors. I'm joined today by ASA General Counsel Michael Williams, who is going to tell y'all all about the case and why we're filing now. Michael, thank you for joining us. What can you tell us about this lawsuit?
Well, yeah, thanks so much, Knox. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here to chat about this lawsuit, and even more excited to get this lawsuit filed and into the world. So, Knox, as you mentioned earlier this week, a lawsuit was filed in the state of Illinois challenging the state's ban on gun suppressors, so commonly known as silencers. It's essentially the case boils down to, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. We believe that suppressors are protected by the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court, in its Bruin case last summer, laid out the standards for governments that want to impose restrictions on items that are covered by the Second Amendment. As most of y'all here today know, essentially the court came down and said that if a government entity wants to potentially infringe on Second Amendment rights, that entity has to justify its regulation by demonstrating that that regulation or that law is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. We are very confident that suppressors are in fact bearable arms, so that they are covered by the Second Amendment, and that therefore, since they're covered by the Second Amendment, the state of Illinois will not be able to justify its flat out ban on the possession and ownership of suppressors under that standard. And therefore, we're pretty excited that once this gets in front of a judge and potentially to an appeals court, that we'll be vindicated, and that hopefully sooner than later, the folks in the great state of Illinois will be able to own and possess suppressors.
That's so exciting, man. We've been working on this stuff, and specifically in the state of Illinois, for over a decade. I can't tell you how many nights that I've spent in Springfield trying to work it through the legislature. We even got pretty close back in 2015, 2016 timeframe. Got a bill passed through the House, nearly got it through the Senate, didn't quite get it across the finish line, obviously. But and you touched on it a little bit before, but explain in a little bit more detail why we're filing this lawsuit now, why we hadn't filed it in the past.
So that's a great point and a great question. Really, the game changer was the Supreme Court's decision in Bruin last summer. That really paved the way, because the fact of the matter was there'd been a lot of progress at the Supreme Court level in terms of defining the parameters of the Second Amendment in a positive direction, starting with Heller up through the McDonald case. But the work hadn't been quite done completely for us to start a case like this until that Bruin decision, which really did change the game in terms of setting a standard of review for other courts to apply when governments are potentially infringing on the Second Amendment. And that standard of review that I mentioned before is going to be very tough for a state like Illinois to overcome, right? Where essentially the state has the burden to prove why its regulation or ban here is in fact constitutional. So it's not a matter of us or the folks who are actually, the plaintiffs in this lawsuit having to prove that the ban is unconstitutional. Again, that burden is flipped over to the state, who has to prove that it is affirmatively constitutional. And we're just very confident that under that Bruin standard, the court will see right through this and will declare this ban unconstitutional.
So the Bruin decision really was a game-changing decision for the Second Amendment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as many of our viewers will have seen, there are cases across the spectrum challenging the constitutionality of magazine capacity restrictions or assault rifle bans or, anything like that, possession by or ownership by folks under 21. All of those lawsuits are essentially made possible by the standards set forth in Bruin. So it really becomes a matter of to what extent are the lower courts applying that standard in a reasonable way. And luckily for Second Amendment supporters, a lot of courts have been following it pretty closely. And like I said, we're confident that the court here in Illinois, the federal court here in Illinois, will follow suit and end up holding these things to be this ban to be unconstitutional.
Well, that's really awesome, and couldn't be we couldn't be more excited about this lawsuit, and hope that the folks in Illinois are equally as excited. Tell me, so if we win this case in Illinois, what ramifications would that have on the other states that ban suppressors?
So, like I said, I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse. There's no guarantee that this will be a quick or easy victory. Even if we win or lose at the trial court level, there would likely be appeals up to the appellate court and maybe even to the Supreme Court. So we're a ways away from, positive change here. But if and when we are successful and this lawsuit is successful in the state of Illinois, that decision would only apply in likely the Seventh Circuit. So a group of states covered by those courts that include Illinois. So it wouldn't automatically mean that folks in a California or a New York, where suppressors are also banned, would be able to, legally purchase suppressors immediately. It would likely require further lawsuits against some of those other laws in other federal circuits. Just like we saw with may issue and shall issue over the last decade or so, where those rights were defined differently by different federal circuit courts until the Supreme Court last year in Bruin ultimately said, essentially, there's may issue regimes are unconstitutional. So it would be a similar situation to that. Even if we win immediately, it's not going to change the game in those other states quite yet until further lawsuits force the issue over there.
Yeah, and the beauty of running the association is that we can make statements that otherwise happen behind closed doors. But for everybody watching this, we are putting work in motion to potentially back litigation in some of these other states. Illinois is the first, but it will certainly not be the last in our attempt to get suppressors legal in all 50 states. That's been a goal of our organization since day one, and we're very committed to it. Silencer Shop is very committed to it, and everybody that's been involved in the association has been very committed to that goal, and we're not going to stop until we get there. So you touched on something that I think is worth noting and going over a little bit, that this isn't going to be a quick or an easy fight, that Illinois is likely to fight this tooth and nail. Obviously, there's a lot of different variables at play, but what is a basic kind of timeline, or how is this going to play out, in Illinois?
That's also a great question. Nobody knows for sure. It's impossible to completely predict that. But I would imagine, we get this case filed already. That's a big step. Now it's up to the courts to actually get it on the docket. The way these things work, typically, we'd hopefully be fighting over a lot of paperwork, probably not much time in the courtroom, which is nice, which would save us some time. But it's not impossible to think that within a year's time, we could have a decision, at least at that trial court level, one way or the other, that would, like you said, likely, no matter which side wins, if we prevail or if Illinois prevails at that first outset at the trial court level, likely there would be an appeal. That's just how these cases tend to go. And, that could take anywhere from another year to another year and a half. So we're looking at, this is going to be a long process of many months to maybe a couple of years.
Cool. Well, it gives us something to look forward to. And obviously, as the case moves forward, we're going to be providing updates at any major milestone along the way, making sure that we're keeping y'all in the loop and appraised of where we're at and where we're moving towards. But man, again, I know we've said it before, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I just honestly couldn't be more excited about this, especially as we look at a lot of different states that are trying to ban them. New Mexico earlier in February tried to ban suppressors. We were lucky enough and fortunate enough to have the facts on our side, and we're able to stop that. We're hearing rumblings of other states doing so, but just can't stress enough that this really is our best opportunity to get suppressors legal in all 50 states and protected in all 50 states. And the two go hand in hand, right? Opening up the 8 remaining states where they're currently prohibited is going to be fantastic. But making sure that, your Virginias, your New Mexicos, your Colorados can never ban them outright is another tremendous win that I don't think has garnered as much attention as it should at this point.
That's exactly right. This is very exciting. It's the beginning of the end, we hope, of suppressor banning.
I love it. Well, Michael, anything else that you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, like you said, I'm very excited about this case. We've got the plaintiffs here are incredible, an incredible legal team who's filed it, and I'm very excited to see what happens next as this case develops.
Well, yeah. So real quick, before we do wrap up, tell us about the legal team that's taking this on.
Yeah, so the folks who are doing the actual on the ground work is a law firm by the name of Cooper and Kirk. They're based in Washington, D.C., which is where I also live, and they handle a ton of these Second Amendment cases and have been successful in many or most of them. They've got dozens of pieces of active litigation, ranging from to include AR bans in various states. They were actually the law firm that prevailed against Illinois several years ago and invalidated as unconstitutional Illinois' may issue permit system well before the Bruin decision. So they've put a lot of wins on the board, and we expect that they're going to be able to do the same in this case.
Well, yeah. So suffice to say, these guys are the A team.
They are the A team, and we're very excited to get to work with them.
Well, right on. Well, Michael, again, thank you so much for joining us. This truly is an amazing opportunity, and can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you. We're excited too.
Awesome.